Good evening. We start here tonight. If you live in the Western Cape and love the pastime to imbibe on alcohol, well, you may be paying more for your tipple if the Western Cape government has its way. The provincial government has called for written submissions on the possible introduction of a minimum unit pricing strategy in that province, and that is for alcohol. What does that really mean? And for that, we speak to Fatsani Banda, the South African Breweries Senior Manager for Excise Tax and Public Policy. Fatsani, thank you very much for your time. I read the opinion piece you recently wrote about your position personally and as South African breweries on this proposed change by the Western Cape government. What exactly is MPU, or minimum unit pricing, when it comes to this particular issue?
So thanks for having me, Xolani. Minimum unit pricing, as it is understood in the position paper presented by the Western Cape government, is essentially, in layman's term, a minimum price that retailers will have to charge for any alcohol beverage. So, for example, you currently have alcohol beverages that are 14 Rand, 16 Rand, 19 Rand, for instance, for our Carling Black Label. That may no longer exist for price-sensitive consumers. They may be charged 20 Rand and above in the Western Cape to consume alcohol, essentially.
Fatsani, some studies have shown that when it comes to an increase in taxes relating to alcohol, be it 10%, as little as 10%, it could lead to a reduction in alcohol consumption at 4.4%. But we know that this is also a way for the Western Cape government to control, crimes and injuries related to alcohol consumption. How would this change the way you say alcohol is consumed and taxed in the Western Cape province?
So just on the point of whether it will affect alcohol harm in general, including gender-based violence, drunken driving, the empirical evidence provided by the Western Cape with regards to NUP does not create a causality or correlation or relationship between an increase in the price and a reduction in those specific alcohol harms. What it does indicate is that there may be some correlation between an increase in the price and a reduction in the demand. So there still needs to be more research, at least in the Western Cape government and the shaping of this policy, as to how exactly will it drive down different variables considered alcohol harm. But in terms of using tax instruments, and there is where SAB has taken a very strong position over the last 2 years in discussions around excise taxes, is we believe that there are currently systemic issues within the excise tax system, and the Minister of Finance has indicated within the budget since 2021, so over the last 2 years, that there will be an excise policy review. What we have put on the table is that what is currently non-existent is that all alcohol beverages are not levied excise based on the alcohol strength. So that creates different market distortions that create an ineffectiveness in the excise tax regime. And we're saying before introducing an additional layer of regulation through minimum unit pricing in the province of the Western Cape, we need to really talk about the national priority of reducing alcohol harm and the pricing mechanism that already exists, which is excise taxes, and the ability to improve that before creating another layer of regulation through the introduction of a minimum unit pricing strategy.
Indeed. What do you mean when you say that due diligence would be to seek to improve the excise system approach rather than to add an additional layer of pricing strategy through the introduction of this minimum unit pricing as a taxation method?
So the World Health Organization has been very specific about which pricing strategy is the most effective in reducing alcohol harm, and it's highlighted excise taxes as the most effective instrument, first of all. Secondly, the World Health Organization has highlighted that in particular, for the best public health outcomes and for the optimal results in reducing alcohol harm, an excise system should be constructed in a way in which all alcohol beverages are levied according to the alcohol strength. So in terms of due diligence, it would be reasonable to consider, first of all, having an excise policy review, or rather prioritizing it, seeing in which ways we can structure the excise system to reach these optimal public health outcomes, rather than to focus on introducing new empirical evidence. The due diligence would be to say, what exactly would the most optimal excise system that would affect price in the alcohol industry? What would that look like? And are we ineffective currently with the current excise policy framework in South Africa? And the due diligence speaks to that. How much have we spent interrogating and really speaking to government around tightening what exists as our excise system?
Fatsani, you've also said that drinkers might go to cheaper products and even be pushed to actually go beyond the Western Cape, across the border into the Northern Cape or the Eastern Cape to get cheaper brands. Why is that bad? You've said that a number of things are actually unintended consequences if this were to pass.
Yes, so alcohol harm remains a national priority, and of course, provinces have their own jurisdiction and statutory powers to implement different means in order to affect the reduction of alcohol harm. But having, for instance, regulatory environments that disincentivize consumers in one areas, and in particular heavy drinkers in one areas, can create multiply enforcement problems across other provinces. So while it may seem to be good for the Western Cape, it could create further enforcement issues in various provinces if other consumers and potentially other entrepreneurs could use the opportunity of differential prices across the provinces to obviously influence the way in which they can grow in the market. So we're just alluding to the fact that enforcement may be a problem across the borders, which may create a bigger problem, a multiplier problem for the respective provinces, and that having not a national approach to dealing with alcohol harm in that regard is what we're trying to address. So ultimately, if we're going to deal with a national problem, we would say excise taxes is the best, without creating differential prices within provinces, market distortionary effects, which include the growth in the illicit market, for instance. Currently, we know a Euromonitor Pan-African illicit alcohol market had said the price differential between legal taxed alcohol and illicit taxed alcohol in South Africa is 49%. So there is already a price sensitivity towards going away or shifting away from legal alcohol in South Africa. There is huge fragility around that. So we're trying to say nationalize the issue, prioritize the conversation on excise taxes rather than isolating it to just one province.
While you're talking about nationalizing the issue, the province of Limpopo is working to limit the trading hours of those traders who actually sell alcohol in an effort as well to limit the harm caused by alcohol. And it's something that the Western Cape government is also talking about in limiting the trading hours when it comes to those traders. What is SAB's stance on that? Because a lot has been said about the impact it would have also on jobs.
Definitely. SAB has taken a similar stance. We don't think there has been enough pilot surveying. We don't think a socioeconomic assessment report has been done in that regard. We think there are missing gaps and holes, even with the stance taken by Limpopo and as well as the Western Cape government that they have put forward for public comment. And we think in a discussion around things that may have a big impact, a big multiplier impact on the current economic contribution that the alcohol industry or the beer industry in particular has made to the South African economy in the hope of dealing with alcohol harm is something that needs to be finely balanced and attuned to. We do think that some of the discussions around increasing the regulation haven't been based on strong empirical evidence, and we encourage both the Limpopo government and the Western Cape government to ensure that enough research has been done around what regulations are appropriate, given and cognizant of the economic contribution, in particular, of the beer industry.
Fatsani Banda is the SAB Senior Manager for Excise, Tax and Public Policy. Thank you very much for your time this evening.